All right, everyone, welcome to this video. In this video, we're going to take a look at a malicious Excel document that I ran across today that just exhibited some unique behavior. As you can see here, I have the sample uploaded in any.run, and you'll notice that there's this yellow ribbon that is prompting us to enable content. And that was really the first tell that I saw that drew my interest, because most of the time when we configure our sandboxes, we enable all of that active content to be executed automatically, because as you can see here, whatever configuration here is preventing this from executing is stopping us from observing any behavior. This dialog here is actually just part of the social engineering of the document itself, and you'll see that here just a little bit later in the video. So we can click OK. You'll notice though that once we do enable that content, that is when we begin to see the connections. So again, without enabling that content, then we do miss out on potentially getting some important IOCs, such as the host that this content was trying to connect out to. Unfortunately, though, at this time, the payload isn't being delivered. And so again, you'll see a little bit more, I'll make a little more sense of that here later in this video. You'll notice that as of the time of this recording in any.run, you see the ribbon itself here. And the message that it's conveying is that data connections have been disabled. And so that message was also different. I knew it didn't have to pertain necessarily to macro code. So I started digging a little bit deeper here. What I found was that the document, as you might suspect, it doesn't have any recognizable macro streams using a tool like OLE dump. And so in order to dig a little bit deeper, I had to switch over to the actual Office IDE and take a look at the document there. Moving over to the Office IDE then, this document exhibits signs that normal Office documents, malicious Office documents have. They have some message in here that contains some social engineering about enabling editing, enabling content. You'll also notice that in this particular VM that my message is just slightly different than what we saw in any.run, in that it's not specifically calling out content around the data connections. And that's likely because right now I have both macros and data connections disabled here. In order to start unraveling what's going on here, one of the first things that I did was look at the hidden sheets. So there was certainly a hidden sheet here which has some functionality that is executed upon the opening of the document. Looking at this, though, you can see that there's really nothing too spectacular here. That is, there isn't a big payload. There certainly isn't a URL or anything that would indicate that this document's going to reach out to a host and pull down a payload. And so just going to continue to scanning through these macros, notice that there's this formula.fill, and that this is grabbing content that is over in the first sheet, so sheet 1 here. This is actually looking at column Y and cells 100, 101, 102, and 103. If we go back to that sheet then, I'm going to go ahead and highlight the column and just scroll down a little bit here. You'll notice that there is certainly no content in those cells right now. And this is then what got me thinking more about the message that I saw previously, and that it pertained to data connections. In looking at the data tab, what you'll notice here is that there is an item that you can select for existing connections, and with this particular cell, the one that was referenced in the previous sheet, it actually grays that out and allows you only to select this connections box. If we select the cell above that, we have both the existing connections and the connections. And what's actually happening then is that this cell actually has an external connection to populate the content of the cell itself. So if you look at the documentation for how you can define data in a spreadsheet, Microsoft says that you can define it in the document itself or externally. So here, this cell is defined an external connection, and if we select the properties, we'll see that there is some interesting behaviors that correspond with that external connection. It enables background refresh. It's going to refresh when opening the file, and that would make sense that the file's open. We want to execute the code, so we need to go out and retrieve it. So it's not there initially. And then if you look at the definition, we can actually see the host where this is trying to connect and retrieve that next payload to execute here. It's also going to clear the data once the document's closed. So it's a bit stealthier just in terms of getting the payload into the Office document for execution. We can also select one of the cells that does not have an external data source, and then we can actually investigate the existing connections. And that really doesn't show us anything that we haven't already seen here, and that we have this connection. So if, for example, when I first was analyzing this document, I didn't immediately connect the dots on these particular cells, but I did start investigating this existing connection and saw that there was this connection defined here, which is the same properties, the same host that we were just investigating. In terms of allowing the content, then there is some tweaks that need to be made. You do need to go into the Trust Center and Trust Center settings, and then if you look at external content, here is the settings for these external data connections. So as you saw with any .run right now, they are still set to prompt users for data connections, and my sandbox was initially as well. So I need to update this much like I did with macros and just allow all data connections. So anyways, something unique that I haven't encountered before, and just thought it was worth putting together a quick video and sharing with everyone. Hope you enjoy, and we'll talk to you in a future video. Thanks.